May the 24th, and welcome to the audience, and welcome to the board, and we're going to call the roll. Alderman Barnhill.
Present.
Vice Mayor Blanton.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Alderman Hanson.
Here.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Alderman Berger.
Here.
Alderman Brown.
Here.
Alderman Potts.
Present.
And Alderman Baggett.
Present.
Look like we've got everybody here. The mayor's here also. So the next item on the agenda is an opportunity for citizens to make comments for item not on the agenda. I do have a speaker card tonight, and Ross Bader and all of his entourage are going to come up and sit down and make a public comment.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Alderman. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Ross Bader. I'm the orchestra director at Franklin High School, and this is Chandler Bell. She's one of my soon-to-be graduate students. She's a cello player in the orchestra, and we're here tonight to just tell you about an exciting thing we're getting ready to do through the Sister Cities program that with here from Franklin with our sister city in Ireland. I'm an East Tennessee native, and in 2018 I had the opportunity to study abroad in Ireland. And I studied in Dublin, but lived in a small village in County Laois, Ireland. And then during the pandemic, I was given, luckily, after everything shut down, I had the opportunity to move here to Franklin to take the job that I'm doing currently. And little did I know that my little village in County Laois is sister cities with Franklin. So it was the most bizarre coincidence when I got here. So at the time, we were looking for things to do with the kids when we were in remote sessions. And so I reached out to the music school in Laois and said, hey, there's this weird connection. Let's do some virtual sessions with our kids. And they were very keen on it. So last year we did about 3 or 4 sessions with our kids, some in small groups, some in larger groups, where they just got to chat with each other and play music for each other. And it was really exciting thing to get to do. And of course, in the back of all of our minds, we were thinking travel exchange at some point. And so later, or this year, when things started to open up a bit more with international travel, I reached out and said, what would you think about me bringing a small group over? And it's going to work out. So next month on June 16th, we're going to bring 8 students over with 2 adult chaperones plus myself. And we're going to do a small workshop with students from the music school in Laois. And they're going to get to stay in students' homes and kind of get to experience real Irish life for a few nights. And then do a live stream performance that we'll be able to send back here to the parents, anyone else that's interested. They're going to get to visit a primary school one day, hopefully, that they're there, and tour around and do all the typical trip to Ireland things. But we just wanted to let you know that we're doing this, and we're hoping that it will lead to more travel exchanges in the future. We're hoping to be able to host them at some point. This isn't officially through Franklin High School, but this time it's involving 8 of the recent graduates from Franklin High School Orchestra, and we're just hoping it leads to who knows what in the future, and just wanted to let you all know about it.
We'll make sure we give you some care packages to take, and if you need any type of proclamation, letter, blah, 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 from the mayor or the president of the sister cities,
We'd love that.
so you just let us know, and we'll make those things happen. And this is really exciting to
We're very
rekindle that relationship.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Do we have, don't you want to say something?
Chandler needs to say something for the record. Push your green.
Button.
I guess I'll just say that I'm really excited for this opportunity. I've never been out of the country before, and so this will be my first time. And I'm really excited to go to Ireland and just explore that all it has to offer. So.
And come play for us.
Oh, we'd love to. We'd love to. Yeah. Oh, and one other thing is we're planning on performing at the Celebration of Nations that the Sister Cities is
good.
putting on in October. And if we can get some Irish people over for that, we'd love to do that. And if not, we maybe can involve them virtually somehow at that as well. So, yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, turn those buttons off if you would, and Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Okay. I don't have any other citizen comments, so we'll jump right into the agenda. And the first item is a special event permit for Franklin on the 4th, sponsored by the Franklin Lions Club in downtown Franklin on July the 4th. Does anybody have any questions about that one? We'll keep moving along. Then we'll go to item 2, which is ordinance 2022-12, an ordinance to the city of Franklin, Tennessee, adopting a budget for FY 2022 to 23, providing an effective date.
Good evening. I wanted to take just a little bit of time to walk you through some key highlights of the proposed budget. It won't be, I don't want to disappoint you, it's not going to be as lengthy as the presentation that was made at Budget and Finance last week, but I will hit some key highlights, and then glad to take any questions or comments or guidance the board wants to provide. We are voting on first reading tonight, and then the first meeting in June will be your second reading and public hearing, and then the second meeting in June is your third and final. Our priority here is to make sure that we get the budget adopted by July 1, so any other time or help the board needs in terms of getting there and making those final votes, don't hesitate to let us know. So I'll walk you through some key components of the budget, and then, like I said, be glad to take any questions you have. So we've developed this several years ago, but it's really kind of 3 pillars that we've tried to make sure not just our budget, but our overall operations in the city focus on. We think this provides us with really what builds a successful community, successful city government. And that is, first, that we manage well, that we provide high-quality services, and that we do it in a way that is not just serving today, but building for the needs of tomorrow. And that we benchmark ourselves, that our performance is not just done in a vacuum here in Franklin, but we look at how we can learn from other places and continue to improve. High-quality community development, that we are a highly competitive community that is competing for jobs and investment every day, and that we do that and do that well, and that we partner with the state of Tennessee and Williamson County and those success stories as well. That keeps our community moving forward. And of course, the foundation of it all is strong financial base. You see that really symbolized in our AAA bond rating from both Standard & Poor's and Moody's, which puts us in the very highest echelon of cities across the country, that we do multi-year planning both on our capital investment, but also look at our operating needs over the long haul, and that we keep that in mind too in terms of managing the debt obligations, the financial commitments, and again, sustainability from that standpoint. So overview, we wanted to make sure we were providing high-quality services. We're focused on both current and future needs for high quality and quality of life, that we're investing in and planning for the future, and again, that we are a highly competitive community, not only in Tennessee, but across the country. So highlights of the key numbers in this budget, $207.1 million is all funds rolled in together. That is a significant increase over the current budget, 15%. The bulk of that is in the fact that we have a planned use of cash for capital projects of over $20 million built in that budget. So that really tells the primary story of why we've got the increase that we have in the total funds, because we're drawing from several of them to help deliver projects, and again, keep the amount of debt that we have to issue to deliver capital projects as low as we can. And then finally, the general fund itself, our primary operating fund, just under $95 million, and a 2% increase over the current budget that we have. So go over several highlights here, work through these next couple slides pretty quickly, but it's a balanced budget. Revenues and expenditures, both on an ongoing basis and overall, are in sync. We comply with debt and reserve policies and the budget goals that were established at the beginning of the process, maintain our services. Property tax rate remains at the same level, one of the lowest in the state of Tennessee at just over 32 cents per $100 of assessed valuation. There are 13 new positions in this budget and a few restored positions across all funds. I won't go through all the positions, but it's a blend of public safety positions, some in our public works area, also some positions that will help us deliver capital investment projects, whether it's a paralegal that will help us in our law department, or a project inspector that helps us oversee those, save dollars, but also do a better job in helping oversee projects and help us deliver those. Couple new positions in sanitation as the community continues to grow, and we've restored a couple positions in water management to help there as well. The budget, and I'll talk more detail in the next agenda item about the compensation plan, but the primary goal in this budget was to do a complete update of our pay plan. Our usual schedule would have had us doing it in the fiscal '21 budget, which was right when COVID kicked in, so we had to delay that until we had a better sense of where we were and what the competitive numbers were, the numbers that help guide our decisions on that pay plan. Again, we'll talk about that in just a little bit in more detail. But that was our primary item as well, and you see the components of how we're going to implement that. The health insurance did go up. Originally, when we put the budget out, it was 5%. We got those numbers in, and it's now going to be 2.5%. So that ended up a little better than we planned, and also is the first increase in 2 years in that category. We've also established a separate capital fund for equipment replacement. This will help us do a better job of systematically and more efficiently replacing equipment driven by need and that ideal time to replace equipment, so that we're not just relying on the budget process, we're relying on a system that'll help us do that well. There is one fee increase in the budget. That's an increase related to residential trash and recycling collection, moving $1.50 from $20.50 a month to $22. And that is the all-in cost. Everything you put out on that curb, that is the cost for us to pick it up, whether it's your rollout containers or yard waste bags or whatever it might be there. We do include funding for the update of the Envision Franklin land use plan. We are at that 5-year time frame that we had anticipated needing to look at the land use plan and provide an update, and funding is fully provided there. You'll notice throughout the budget there are performance measures. We don't just talk about what we spend, we try to talk about what we deliver to the community, and hopefully you see that referenced throughout each of the departmental write-ups in this budget. So let's talk a little bit about the numbers. First, where the money comes from. You'll see our sales tax continues to be by far the driver at 58.8% of our revenue in the general fund, coming from our local option sales tax. That has grown pretty significantly over the last couple years with a combination of inflation, combination of the additional dollars that are coming back locally from the voter-approved half-cent sales tax that the first 3 years we dedicated to the city's portion to public schools, and now it's come back to the city in the last year, and that's reflected in that number as well. Then you see state shared tax, which is really sales tax coming back from the state on a per capita basis, and the property tax that remains after we pay our general obligation debt service. We pay that first with property tax, and then the balance comes back to the general fund to fund operations. The remaining are all sort of a collection of various fees, grants, and other smaller taxes. Where you look at that a little different way, when you roll them into a consumption-based tax, you see over 80% of it comes from consumption-based sales tax, alcohol tax, the state shared tax, which is again a sales tax. So that's just to give you a sense of how dependent we are on that level, that type of economic activity. That's part of why we have a higher reserve policy than many cities, because we have a pretty high dependency on sales tax and these consumption taxes, which can change very quickly when you hit an economic slowdown. So we're mindful of that. Then you look at where we spend it, where we allocate it in terms of our functional areas. You can see by far public safety is our biggest investment in terms of where we provide service. And then you see other areas like our public works areas, which incorporates parks and our streets maintenance, and then our various other operating expenses, economic and community development investments as well. And then finally, the categories where we spend it. We spend 72% of that total general fund budget on personnel-related costs. So salaries, benefits, et cetera, are the lion's share of where those dollars go. And then finally, just to summarize where we've been through two pretty unusual years, marked by uncertainty, instability, challenges, but we really came through it well. At one point, we thought we'd have to draw on our reserves significantly. We did not. We came through well, and that's a tribute to the leadership of our team and leadership of the board in helping us navigate that. We've updated the compensation plan and entirely implemented it in one budget year. Those of you who were on the board a few years ago, you might remember when we did that comprehensive update, we were phasing it in over 18 months. We're able to do this completely in the beginning of this budget year, July 1. So we're proud of that. We continue to focus on delivering high-priority capital investment projects, and you see staffing adjustments to help address that. And then we are well within and above your policy guidelines related to reserves and debt and those elements. So I'll stop there and take any questions you have and anything else you'd like us to expand upon. Again, the Budget and Finance Committee heard this in much more detail last week, and you've got a small 470-page document that gives you all the detail, but we're glad to jump in. I want to thank our team, our finance team, Michael Walters-Young, Christine, back behind me here, worked very hard on helping our team and folks throughout the organization. Every department has not only the department directors, but key folks that help them analyze and put together the budget, and we're very grateful for their support and leadership in doing that. So again, I'll stop there and take any questions you have. Our next item goes into much greater detail related to the compensation plan. So we might want to hold those questions because we'll have a panel up here to talk to you about that. So any questions?
Questions, comments? Alderman
I do
Barnhill?
have one. You mentioned 20 million for capital projects. How much of that came out of reserve?
Well, none of them are coming out of the general fund reserve. We've transferred money from the general fund into the capital projects fund.
Okay.
So we're not doing a draw on reserves within this budget. It's really already been provided or transferred over from the general fund. The portion of sales tax that's dedicated to that was transferred over. One of the transfers that's on the budget amendment you'll consider tonight, first reading, moves some additional money to get at that sales tax growth and that portion that goes to capital projects. So,
Because I was thinking we discussed 14 million being pulled from reserves to balance the budget. But, okay.
yeah, we're not using reserves to balance your operating budget. We have planned use of reserves that are in these other funds, like the road impact fees or parkland or facilities taxes. We're using those cash resources to help pay for projects.
Everybody good? Go ahead, Alderman.
No, I
Vice
leaned
Mayor.
over Matt. I thought it was quite interesting that our alcohol sales tax or tax is 5%, while our property tax is 10% of our budget. So that just spoke to me very interestingly.
Well done, Franklin, well done.
Yeah, it's like, all righty.
Now,
Lots
the property tax does generate more than that, but we pay debt with it first. And then what's left is that 10%.
Okay, well, to
So-
look at that pie chart, I was
Yes.
like, wow, okay.
That's some creative thinking. I'm not sure where your mind is.
This is why
I
I'm not
could
on
have given
budget
this
and finance.
presentation at Beer Board if you wanted me to.
Well, why don't we do the FY '23 proposed compensation plan, the compensation study performed by Burris Thompson Associates? Is that where you want to go?
Let's go there. Let me introduce our team that's with us, some of whom you know, some of you may not. Kevin Townsell, our HR director. We have Beth Thompson with us, who's from Burris Thompson and Associates, the consultant that has assisted us multiple times in looking at our compensation plan, but especially this last go-around. And then Delaney Childress, who's in our HR department as well. Delaney is an HR generalist and has worked very closely on this plan, and I think knows it backwards and forwards as well. So we're going to walk through some key elements of the compensation plan for you, and then glad to take any questions you have. As I referenced in the budget presentation, updating this pay plan was by far the number one goal in this budget for us, to make sure we were updating that, being highly competitive in the market. You'll see what that means to us as we go through this presentation. But taking care of our people was clearly what we needed to do. And we were past due for good reason, but past due to take care of it. And we're proud that we have a plan, I think, to move forward with that, and glad to take your feedback as we walk through it. So, Kevin,
And we have
start us
Sarah
off.
Silver.
I was gonna say,
that joined
And
us,
Sarah
too.
just came up here, too.
Yeah.
All right, you want to go ahead and tell me your name and your title for the record?
My name is Sarah Silvis, and I'm the Risk and Benefits Manager.
All right, welcome. This is the compensation plan FY23. A little bit of background, Eric already touched on it. The current compensation and classification plan was updated 5 years ago. And that wasn't the goal. The goal was, again, to do it, again, FY21. We all know why we couldn't do it then. Now we're poised to do it, and we had it done. And so Eric has also told you that the people involved would be the compensation consultant of Burse and Thompson. We have one representative here. Also, this group, along with Steve Thompson, met with every department director, met with HR, met with the city administration, and met with our budget team. So plenty of questions were asked. Directors got a chance to ask any questions they wanted to, and a lot of paperwork back and forth, obviously.
Let me make one clarification on that first bullet. It's a comprehensive review of the pay plan. Every budget, we make some adjustment to certain positions when we learn things about what's going on in the market, what our needs are. So we're always looking at it, but we made a pledge when we did the updated plan, the new plan, what we called the new plan, about 8 years ago, that we would do every 3 to 4 years a comprehensive look. So that's what this amounts to, is the comprehensive look. Every budget, we've made some tweaks because we learned things on what's going on in the market. So, but doing the comprehensive work is what this is about, so.
All right. And so the reason we have a consultant is we want to target a certain percentage, certain percentile. And we want to be in the top 25% or better in terms of compared to the market, and that's with public sector and private sector. And to do that, we look at some benchmark cities. And you'll see from the PowerPoint what those cities are. Of course, the last one talks about plus also applicable private sector. And to talk to us a little bit more about the methodology, Beth will take it away.
Thank you, Kevin. Hope you can hear me all right. So what we do is every couple of years, of course, we missed 2020 because of COVID, but every couple of years, Burris Thompson and Associates performs a survey across all of Tennessee where we ask we send out surveys to over 200 cities and counties, and we usually get 70 to 90 responses back where we request all of the actual salary data from all of those cities and counties. And for each of our clients, we narrow down the benchmarks that are most appropriate for that client, as you see on the list that's in front of you in the PowerPoint. And so what we do for each job in the city is we take the actual survey data, and for Franklin, we've used the 75th percentile of that data, and we match it to the most appropriate job for your city, to that group, and we use the public sector benchmarks for one data point, and we have a private sector survey database that has about 4,000 job titles in it. We can match almost every job in the city with at least one and sometimes two jobs in that database. The only jobs we cannot match in that database are going to be your certified public safety, so your law enforcement, and then also your certified firefighters. Those jobs are not going to be in the private sector database, but everything else we can match at least one or two jobs to a job in the city. And what we mean by 75th percentile, just kind of as a clarification, is in a list of ranked numbers, the 75th percentile is going to be the number at which 75% of the numbers are below and 25 are above. It's a little less confusing than when you're talking about the median, because people can often confuse the median with the average. But since we're at 75th percentile, it's much easier to understand. So that's where we pull the information from. We get the number from our public sector database, the number from our private sector database for each job, average those together, and that becomes our market data number for each job in the city. And once we've pulled that together for every single job, we look at the market data for every job and compare it to the midpoint for that job in your salary structure where the job is. And once the salary structure has been determine whether or not the salary structure itself needs to be moved up or if the job may need to be moved. And in this case, as Eric's going to talk about in the slides coming up, both of those things have happened. So you've got jobs that have been moved into a new salary grade and the salary structure itself has been moved. But that's how we come up with the data to make those determinations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
You're welcome.
So I'll walk through the key findings of the study and then the big takeaways. What we found is overall, compared to where we were a year ago, we needed to move our pay scales 10%. So you all may remember you did a down payment of that, if you will, in December. So we did a 5% movement there. We're suggesting a second 5% to do that, to make sure we're positioned within our target. Many positions required movement of pay grade because that market moved and we needed to move it to a different pay grade from where it was. Just to put some more specifics on that, the city overall has 275 positions, and 68% of them, 187 positions, require a movement of 1 or 2 pay grades to hit the appropriate place in the market that Beth just described. So translating that into actual employees or team members, that's 79% of our team members will move 1 or 2 pay grades based on this market data. And this is especially pronounced in the lower paying areas of our pay plan. We really found that that's where the market moved the most, so much so that our 2 lowest pay grades, B and C, are essentially non-existent. We don't have any positions in those pay grades anymore. We moved those up to either pay grade D or E to more adequately reflect what's going on in the market. So again, here's the recap where we've been. Let's not forget that we already took action to try to take a bite out of this early, and we did that in December, and our employees saw the benefit of that, their first paycheck in January. And that included a 2.5% across-the-board market adjustment, so everyone got a pay increase based on that, and we moved the pay grades 5%. So that's already occurred. That's already in the background before we even go into this next step of implementation. And there are going to be about 5 key steps as we walk through this. First of all, we adopt the new pay plan with the adjustments in pay ranges, with the 5% adjustment, which is a result of a total, when you roll in your end of the year adjustment, of 10% from where we were a year ago. So we make those adjustments right off the top. We move impacted positions into their new pay grades. So anyone who's in those pay grades that's below their new minimum, so they may be moved from pay grade C into pay grade E. If they're below the minimum for E, we will immediately move them up to the new minimum of their new pay grade. So that's really the first action we take in terms of direct impact to folks' pay. Next, we're recommending an across-the-board 5% market adjustment, an additional market adjustment to reflect what's happened in the market and the competitive pressures there. So you add that onto the 2.5 that happened at the end of December. That's across the board 7.5 from where we were a year ago in terms of those adjustments. So that is going to happen for everyone. The 4th step is what we've done over the last several years related to merit increases. This is based on the most recent performance evaluation. It's an additional between 0.5 and up to 2.5% increase based on performance in the last full year evaluation. So that would be implemented as well as a next step. And then finally, we make an additional adjustment for those whose pay grades moved, to help move them a little further through the pay grade in recognition that they've already been doing that job for a period of time before we've adjusted the pay grade, and it's 3% per pay grade adjustment. So if you move 1 pay grade, you'll get an additional 3%. If your position moved 2 pay grades, you'd get a 6% additional adjustment. And then finally, this is really a recognition of the cost pressures that folks face, and especially the fact that really some of our lower paid team members have to travel farther to get to their job and absorb some additional costs, that we're recommending an additional $1,000 to the base salary for all of our team members that are making less than $90,000. So we feel that sort of gets at the fact too, that when you're doing percentage increases, those who are making a little, on the higher levels, get a higher raw dollar amount because of just the math of a percentage against a larger number. And this helps offset that a little bit too, and addresses, we think, some of the pressures folks who might be on the lower end of our pay grades might be experiencing. So there's that key point in terms of a last piece, and then we'll take you through some examples here. And I think I'm starting off, right? Kevin? Okay. So this first one is an example of a maintenance worker. And that is a position that had a 2 pay grade adjustment. And this position currently is around, as an example, is at $33,000. So to just get to the new minimum of that new pay grade that's 2 grades higher, there's a $9,000 adjustment just to do that. Plus the 5% market adjustment, that's $2,000. In this case, we're assuming a 2% merit increase, that's just under $900. And then the fact that that pay grade moved 2 pay grades, that's 6% adjustment of $2,700 and an additional $1,000 on the base pay based on that under $90,000. So this is a pretty pronounced one on someone who's really and probably currently in one of our lowest pay grades, adjusting up a couple pay grades and getting a pretty significant increase. But again, the market, we think, really dictates this, that this is the right thing to do to stay competitive and to take care of folks that are in this position.
All right, we've got a second example. Let's say we're talking about a building inspector 2. Current salary of this person, about $52,400. Movement to the new pay grade. Remember, the pay grade's moved up. To get this person at the minimum, it'd be another $1,200. Then, on that, we'll give the 5% market adjustment. That's another $2,600. Then again, for this person, we're going to assume the merit increase. This is the one where it's 0.5 to 2.5. They're on the lower end. They got a 1% adjustment. And then, since the pay grade didn't actually move, they didn't move from pay grade, so they stayed within it. There's no 3% or 6%. But still, they're under $90,000. So that's where we have an extra $1,000. That would bring that person who was making about $52,400 up to $57,900, approximately 9.5% increase.
So this is an example where we had the market about right in terms of the pay grade, but we still have an increase of around 10% just because of the other elements that are present there in terms of moving the pay grades and making these other adjustments to recognize some of the inflationary pressures. So here's an example of a staff engineer too, a little higher paid position starting at $80,000. There is a 1 pay grade adjustment, so we've got first a movement into the minimum, so there's an adjustment there. 5%, the 5% added on, a merit increase kind of middle of the road around 1.3%, and then the pay grade adjustment. Now this position's, by the time we do those first 4 adjustments, we're above $90,000, so there's not that last adjustment for them. And this position still ends up with around a 15% adjustment there.
In this last example, you could be either a firefighter or a police officer. Let's say this one we pulled up makes approximately makes $53,500 currently. As they move to the new pay grade, to get to the minimum, that'd be an extra $195. Now we put on the 5% market adjustment. That's about another $2,600. Let's say this person had a pretty decent merit adjustment of 1.65%. That's almost another $1,000. Now, because on this one, the pay grade did move, they now get the 3% additional. And because their base won't have them at $90,000, the new salary would go up by another $1,000. So this person would get approximately almost 11% increase.
And with that example too, I would note we did do some additional adjustments in fiscal 21 in public safety that we didn't necessarily do for everybody. So that's a little bit baked into this as well. So there is some real ramifications on where we are with starting pay with police and fire and public safety. It's highly competitive, and just gave you some benchmarks of where it is now and where it's going to be. Starting pay for a fire cadet, so somebody coming in who needs to go through complete training, has no certification or background coming in, you'll see that's a $7,000 bump from where we are now in terms of competing for that from a recruitment standpoint. For those that we bring in, we call laterals that come in with certifications that we don't have to do nearly the amount of training. They're ready to really get on shift fairly quickly after some initial training. That's about a $6,000 bump from where we are now for those folks. On police trainees, pretty similar story, about a $6,000 bump from where we are now up to $50,000 for those who have no training. They're just starting the training process with us. For someone who comes in or has completed that first year successfully, they would automatically bump up to over $55,000 from successfully completing probation. And then we look at the laterals within police, and we've developed sort of a sliding scale from 55 up to 65 based on years of experience. We find we are getting some pretty experienced officers coming from other states that want to work here, but we need to be competitive. We're competing with other communities to bring them in and secure them, and having something of this nature where we can recognize those years of experience and the fact that they're committed to a career in law enforcement, we think will be a difference maker for us. So I added one more slide, and Sarah can maybe chime in on this if we need to, but I wanted to give you a little bit of clarification. We talked about a change in health insurance premiums, and sometimes that percentage gets confused with the pay increase in percentage. So while they're percentages, they're not off the same base, so that benefit number or that cost for your insurance is much lower than your salary, obviously. But this just gives you a sense. Our kind of standard insurance program, the PPO, the single, is going up about $1.28 per pay period. The full family coverage is going up a little over $5 per pay period. And our high deductible plan that has a health savings account with it, that's going up in single 74 cents and just under $3. But I will add that we make a contribution to that health account, and we're raising that $200 for single and $400 for the family option. And those dollars stay with the employee. Even if they leave us, that account is theirs. So this is a little different approach. There is a higher deductible, but it has the employee manage it a little more consumer-based and provides that health savings account for them to help manage that. Of course, between those single and families are plus ones for a plus one for a child or plus one for a spouse, but I wanted to give you a sense of the range of how that health insurance piece is changing. It's the first time in 2 years we've had to do it, but when you look at it as a whole, it's not a huge chunk out of the other increases that we're dealing with that are driven by the needs in the market. So I think I'll stop there. We're glad to take any questions you have or anything we can clarify. We wanted to just give you a set of examples to give you a sense of it. We can go on all night with different examples. They're all over the map, but I think that gives you a sense of the range of what we're looking at in terms of adjustments, and think it's the right move for us to better reflect the market and stay in that top quartile of the folks we compete for to retain and attract great talent to serve our community. So I'll stop there.
Alderman Barnhill.
What is the overall cost of all of these changes?
So collectively, it's just over $8 million across all funds. If we were doing a typical year, that number's probably around $3 million. So in terms of an additional cost above what you have done in a normal year, you're looking at somewhere around $5 million plus to make the changes that we're recommending.
Back up a couple of slides. Can you do that?
Sure.
Keep going. Let's just take that slide there, for instance. You've added the movement to new pay grade, the market adjustment, and the merit increases into that, and then did your 3% off of the 53.5 plus those three numbers, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, you're layering them on each other.
Yeah.
They're each building on each other.
So if the pay grade increase was the first item, it would be 3% times 53,500.
Right, yeah. But in this case, we've got a slightly higher minimum, so we bring them up to the minimum, and then we start applying the next steps.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Other questions?
I think I was excited to see the examples, because that was going to be my question. Everybody good?
I want to thank this team.
Yeah.
This has been a big undertaking. We reviewed every job description, starting back last fall to do this work. And our HR team has been sort of pushing folks to make sure they got that in. And then we've carefully reviewed this. There may still be a few tweaks. I've sent it out to departments in detail, and there may be a few little places because there's a lot of positions. So we may have a few tweaks between now and when you vote on the plan and you do your second and third reading. But we'll tie those up in the next week or so and let you know. I don't expect major ones, but there might be a couple places where a pay grade may need to shift in one spot or another, but nothing that's going to be a significant number change. But that may happen as we're doing a little more due diligence with our departments. So, thank you.
Go ahead, Alderman Baggett.
One comment, because you mentioned speaking to the departments and department heads. I think in the budget and finance meetings, when we listened to the departments, it was alarming on the fire and law enforcement as well, the kind of turnover. And so I'm hopeful that we really dial this in on those departments, especially because of I think we had lost seven firefighters in 2 months, and we had been losing maybe 7 a year prior. So I don't know if that number has changed or not, but I just hopefully law enforcement, public safety. I know that I hear from officers as well, where it's a competitive market. So we didn't dig into that too granularly today, but trust that has been obviously a priority, because I think for me, I speak for myself, it's a high priority because we've got great men and women that serve in those departments, and having them leave to go, we just want to make sure that we take care of them in this process. So thank you.
We had very specific and direct conversations about that with both chiefs and the consultant team and HR, myself, and we're very mindful of that. Some of what you don't see here too is we also look at refreshing the stipends related to paramedics. We're adding a different stipend for the AEMT, so the advanced EMT training, because that's what the market is demanding. So that is also there. Chief Faulkner has added some additional opportunities for folks who step up and do things like SWAT and some of the other specialty areas that we benefit from those additional trainings and skills. We added in last year's budget, and we've really fully implemented at the end of this fiscal year, the Police Officer 2, which provides sort of a career ladder for officers that are focused on serving on patrol, and gives them sort of a step up and an additional pay grade and place to go if they want to just stay on patrol. They're good at it, and we want them to serve there if that's where they're called to do. And so those are all things that we think put us in a good spot. But we look at it all the time, and you'll know we'll come back if we need to. But we feel like we've positioned ourselves well and competitively in the market, and maybe we'll get a few of those folks back.
Okay. Kevin? Beth? Delaney and Sarah, thank you. Okay, item 4 is City of Franklin Contract 2022-0063, Professional Services Agreement with James Duncan Associates related to road impact fee study update for 2022 for $37,000. Yep.
There we go. Thank you. Good evening. I could say, hey. Brandy and I had talked about that. Thank you, Eric. On the agenda for the work session is we're asking permission to proceed with updating our road impact fee model. And we try to do that every 3 to 5 years, and we're at the 5-year mark now. What we thought would be a good idea, we have 4 slides just to talk on a very high level of what the road impact fee framework is for the city of Franklin. And the study will take, the initial part of the study will take 2 to 3 months, and then we'll have some conversations with you, and then we'll ask the consultant to finalize it. But Paul and I would like to share a little bit of information, a little bit of history, and then if you have some questions, we'll answer it, and then as we go forward, why the consultant is performing the work, we'll be more than happy to provide additional information. Road impact fees are one of 3 development fees for the city of Franklin. We have sewer and water, which Michelle, Brian, and Mark have spoken to you about, and we also have park impact fees. And all 3 of those development fees make sure that development that are entering our community are paying their pro rata share for the impact on those various improvements. And in the case of road impact fees, we want to make sure that the vehicular capacity of arterial roads and collector roads are the same after a development comes into the community. And that's how the model is formulated to determine the vehicular impact of either residential, commercial, or mixed-use development. The legal framework has been tested in court. We've responded to inquiries over the years, and we've always been able to show the rational nexus between a development and the impact on our infrastructure, in this case, of course, roads and our street network. I will say that the fees are for increasing vehicular capacity, and that's how we manage those funds for the city. It's not for maintaining existing roads. It's to actually make improvements that add vehicular capacity to our existing road network. The history, it dates back to 1987. And as you can see, I'm not going to read through each one of the various updates, but the last went into effect in July 1, 2017, so we're at that 5-year mark. When the road impact fees were initially adopted, we did have collector and arterial roads accounted for. They had since dropped off, but back in the last update, we do collect separately for collector roads and arterial roads. Now, in doing that, to provide that rational nexus, where the development happens in the quadrant of the city is where those funds collected for collector roads will be put into use to increase vehicular capacity on collector roads. The arterial road fees will be citywide. And that's very similar to the parkland fees that you're familiar of with residential development. Neighborhood parks stay in the quadrant, but there is a portion of those fees that go towards the community parks where children and adults go play organized sports, our bigger parks. This illustration shows generally what the road impact fee revenues are and how important they are as we consider capital projects, in this case for roads. And every year when we're updating the budget and our models and considering capital projects, we try to forecast what developments have been entitled, how they're coming online, and what the fees that we'll collect that we'll be able to use to fund those capital projects. And that's really it for this evening. Any questions?
Go ahead, Alderman Brown.
Just curious the scope of the study. In other words, are we going to look at road failure rates? Are we going to look at how we've applied impact fees in the past? Or is this just modeling the road impact fees? Because I definitely would have a lot of questions about sort of how we've been applying these, where we've been applying these. You know, there's certainly pain points throughout the city from development that have happened. Where have those been applied in the past? How do we look at do we even look at road failures, that kind of stuff? So
the way the impact fee works is there's a certain cost associated with building a roadway. We take that cost to build the roadway, and then we look then at the cost of that capacity. So every development that comes forward, whether it's a single-family residential development or a commercial development, through what's called the ITE manual, which is basically statistics associated with trip generation, that the number of trips that they generate for that development, it is assumed that they consume a certain amount of capacity. So we take the cost it takes us to build it and then assign that to essentially those trip generations. And so essentially this is really just a financial exercise to determine what that fee should be as development is approved. Whether you build the road beforehand, afterhand, or during construction, that's their proportionate share essentially. I don't know if that totally answers your question. It's really a financial exercise on determining the adequate fee, not exactly where it's spent or where it has been spent in the past.
If I
Sure,
may
please.
add on to what Paul and Alderman Brown's question, what I also heard you say is that as we develop and manage growth as a community, the first thing we do is when we obtain traffic impact studies, analysis, not only does our team look at them, but we hire a third-party consultant to validate them. And we have two on board that work in the community, so they are building a knowledge base of those pain points that I heard you say. We want to try to stay as current as we can. But again, as far as development, as the impact fee model pertains to development, we are collecting the fee based on trip generation, and then it's our charge to put that to work in capital projects, or in the improvements that the developer will make, in which we bring development agreements back to you in conjunction with their development and/or site plans.
That really is looking at, and I'm just trying to understand, that's really looking at, really in close proximity to that development, even if impact, because we talk about the nexus, if it happens within that market area, right? So let's say a development happens, McEwen, and yet it has impact down Cool Spring. We're not looking at that impact, we're looking at that nexus or that proximity to that development when you do the road impact.
Go ahead. And the scoping.
Yeah.
So the road impact, the way it works, the arterial funding can be spent citywide. The collector funding should be spent in those specific quadrants.
Gotcha.
Now, there may be a weird development that crosses quadrants that there's probably some flexibility with how we use that, but generally speaking, we try to keep the collector in that quadrant.
When a development comes in and they're performing their due diligence, we'll work with them to scope the study and their impact. Large or small development, maybe it's bordering a quadrant. And so we have the best idea for what that impact will be. And it, of course, translates into the impact fees, but ideally it can translate into improvements that are typically performed more efficiently and more timely by the development. Thank you.
Okay, good job. Item 6. No, I'm sorry, 5. Resolution 2022-35, resolution to amend the Franklin Police Department Wrecker Service Policy and Agreement. This is an exciting item, Chief. Come on up.
Thank you. Good evening. I don't know, yeah, there you go. It's been a while since this has been updated, and we really picked up on it when the weather was so bad back, remember, in January, February, we had a lot of snow and ice. We actually had wreckers that were refusing to respond, and we had some major situations that were of a public safety incidents. So we started looking at the contract and thought, this really needs to be updated. So it just includes the typical things about response time, showing up with the equipment that they need, particularly with larger vehicles, and making sure that they're good to go. If they're not, they need to tell us so we can go on to the next scheduled wrecker. And I think it also looks at the rate increase as well. So it's just an update.
Yeah, it bumps the rate 5% and then does provide a little more clear ability for us to take someone off the list if they're not performing.
What were their reasoning for not showing up?
They didn't really give one. They just said we won't be there.
Okay,
So
good enough.
that's good enough of me. It's like, okay,
Moving on.
time to revisit the contract. Thank you.
I would find it hard to say I'm not coming to Chief Faulkner, but
change the contract.
Item 6 is City of Franklin Contract 2022-0085 between the City of Franklin and the Gear Foundation in amount not to exceed $17,500 for the receipt of Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus CDBG-CV funds to reimburse them for expenses incurred to prevent, prepare, and respond to the coronavirus.
Good afternoon. This is the Gear Foundation that supports our disabled adults. And as many of you know, they had My Thrift Store. This is an opportunity for them to purchase a van with My Thrift Store closing down. They have placed those disabled adults in other positions throughout Middle Tennessee. And Dave and Sandy have purchased a van to transport them to these places of employment, and they mentioned Eric, and they're very grateful that part of that is working with our SCS department. Additionally, it allows them to take them to activities that they can participate in and be part of the community. And Dave did mention that his computer and printer are over 7 years old, and he would really love to get a new printer and computer. I just think they were all affected by coronavirus, and this is a really great opportunity for us to support our community and the people that are driving force behind making sure these young adults continue to be active participants in our city.
Alderman Bland.
I know that we've had several, I guess, withdrawals from this money. Where are we now on a balance?
About 400,000,
Okay, and is there a time limit where we have to disperse it?
2024.
Okay, great.
Good questions. Thanks, Kathleen. Item 7 is City of Franklin Contract number 219-002, 96, amended and restated with Legacy Cool Springs LLC for parkland dedication, historic structure restoration, arboretum and mountain bike trail system, construction and maintenance agreement. Love it.
Thank you. Isn't it? Thank you, Mayor. It's a good evening. So this is just an amendment. We brought this originally in 2019. It was to restore the Carruthers home that's on this site as part of the parkland. So all of that's being paid for. The reason we're bringing it back is that at that time we looked at, with the residents that are moving in this area, this could be a very small event space, more on the outside and that type of thing. So after COVID hit, Middle Tennessee State University came through and did a study through their historical preservation department, and come to find out this is more historical, being one of the first black-owned family farms. And what was considered originally even as slave walls that was on the property, these were masons, rock masons, and built most of the original home and the walls. And so we wanted to come back. We believe is, again, being paid completely by the parkland fees, but to amend this contract, that this needs to be more of like a museum and rehab and restore this structure. We'll look at whether the city parks department runs this particular program in the future, and we'll maintain the park side and let this be part of the fuller story as far as our historical significance. So that's what's before you tonight.
You know, before I take any questions, I know I had a 20 or 30-page document. I assume that was maybe what was generated. And if you could share that with the board, if they haven't had it, it's fascinating reading about that property.
It is, and it's many of even the families tied to Sant that is part of the budget process of us maintaining that cemetery. The families buried there too. Relatives still live here. So it's the connection of all this has really kind of come about, and I think it's exciting for our community, and especially in the Cool Springs area. We're so used to it in the downtown, but not in that area. So, but I'll be happy to share that, Mayor. Thank you.
Alderman Brown?
I think it'd be great, if MTSU, between Rosenwald School, we've got Natchez, Macklemore, we've got this farm, throughout the city. There's a lot of really great opportunity here to tell a collective story. It'd be really great if we could get the resources around actually connecting the dots around some of this stuff too, and actually putting it together as a all in one sort of tour and all that.
Absolutely.
Kind of like a trail, like the trails
Yeah, I
program you
just-
see in other things.
At the point that we start really,
Mm-hmm.
some really wonderful things, it'd be great to
Absolutely.
to do more with it, so.
And Amanda Rose, of our planning, of course, our historical planner, has been heavily involved in kind of making sure, especially through this project and through the development of this project, that we kind of make sure that story is being told. I think probably the Civil War Commission will probably be the best location that we bring that back through in order to now come back to you in a later date. But that's a great points. Thank you, Alderman.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Just a quick question.
Go ahead.
Do we have any idea when we're going to start that, will they start the renovation in that area?
So-
When they acquired that, I went through that house, crazy, and I actually ended up helping them sort through some stuff. It was really, I just don't know what's happening, and I worry about that being empty and sitting there because it could be vandalized, something else could happen to it.
Absolutely.
And
So,
and how about the outbuildings too?
and the outbuildings. So some of the outbuildings actually will become part of our maintenance, but restoring those, but they'll serve as a different purpose by us maintaining the property. Part of the parkland is to donate over 9 acres. So under that parkland ordinance, 5 acres, we can take that on. But it'll be mountain biking, more passive area. They're supposed to begin construction on the home this year.
Oh, they are? This
And
year?
so it'll
Okay.
be the latter part of this year, as they've had to add the infrastructure in surrounding
Yeah,
it.
to have the roads.
It's,
Huffman's Ridge.
yeah, Huffman's
Ridge.
Ridge.
Yeah.
It's
See-
basically at the,
Interstate,
Going
Interstate,
take the
Liberty,
first left.
South.
Take the
there
first
used to be,
left.
there
or
used to be
southeast?
right there between,
Well-
that roadway, there used to be a nursery through there, a
Yeah,
gardening
you-
nursery.
right, you take
Right.
that
Yep.
left.
Right across the way is, and that's tucked in there, and
But you
it's,
go up there, and if you go up, there's that yellow rental house, and then the church on the left, right by the interstate. You go up, and as the road gets up a little bit, before it gets to the crest, it's right on the right.
it's a great piece
Yeah,
of
and you could drive
property.
back and see that.
But they're supposed to start on the parkland side for the home, and then the park side of things will start in 2023.
Oh,
So
okay.
They're expecting
All
2
right.
years of
I just
restoration.
wanted to know.
Well, that document I referred to has lots of pictures too. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
How about item 8, which is American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA program administered by State of Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation for certain water, wastewater, and stormwater projects?
So there's another source of COVID-related dollars that are flowing from the state of Tennessee, from the Department of Environment and Conservation. And so this process doesn't start until June, but we want to walk you through at least our initial assessment and the projects we've identified that could draw on it. There is a match associated with this, so it's a little bit different than some of the other programs, but it ties into water, sewer, and stormwater specifically through TDEC. So she was kicking it off. Christine will kick it off, and then we'll take you through this and answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Eric. When we were here a month ago, we promised that we would be back with some more information about American Rescue Plan Act, and this, like Eric said, this is a separate pot of money in which the state of Tennessee is the administrator of. There is an allocation for the city of Franklin, and we're going to show that here in just a moment. This program probably will sound a little bit more like typical grant programs that you've seen us come in and present before. So just to try to keep them a little bit segregated, the first program, the direct allocation ARPA program, is the $9.2 million. This is a second program, and we'll talk about the amounts here in a moment. However, just to give you a little bit of framework, this, of course, is federal money. It's being directed to the states to administer for water, wastewater, and stormwater projects. Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation is the administrator for the state of Tennessee. They have also established the criteria for the project eligibility. Back in the last month in April, there were meetings held throughout the state, and we had water and sewer engineers, our city engineer, and then finance folks who attended those meetings to learn more about the program. Not all water, wastewater, and stormwater projects are eligible. So we needed to go to learn about the program and then match that up with projects that were coming down the pike, not only for funding amounts, but that would fit within the time horizons of this program. Because certainly we plan over a 10-year period. Some projects would not fit into that time frame, even if they fit into the eligibility requirements. This TDEC ARPA program, all 95 counties in Tennessee have an allocation. A good number of cities do. All cities that have a water and sewer utility and/or a stormwater permit have eligibility based on population. And that's the program that we're going to talk about, potential projects here. There will be opportunities, what's going to be called a competitive grant program, probably early in calendar year 23. And so we're going to be showing potential projects that will exceed our eligibility for this first go-around, because we want to be able to perhaps apply for some more funding early in 2023. So we know what the project eligibility are, so that's why we're going to talk a little bit about projects in excess of what has been allocated in this first go-around. It's going to work a little bit more like a grant in that we have to actually apply. That window opens July 1st. Actually June 1st is when we can first apply. We must apply no later than November 1st, but we as staff would like to apply early in the summer because there is a review period, and TDEC must approve our projects before we can keep on moving with that. As Eric says, it does require local matching funds, and that is true of all the counties and the cities that are in the program. The match differs depending on what the TDEC believes your ability to pay is, but there actually is no free money in this program, and so that's where it really is, in our opinion, it's going to be a challenge for some cities and counties to participate, because if you don't have matching funds, you can't be part of this program. And certainly, we're at more of an advantage because we have a capital program in place, and we already anticipated needing to be able to put city money toward projects. And then finally, this is going to be a program that we're called the applicant, but once we're approved, we will be incurring those expenses. We pay the contractor, then we actually apply to TDEC for reimbursement for 65% of eligible cost. And that will require at a minimum, it'll take 60 days to receive reimbursement, but we go through this process with our state revolving fund loans, and it can take 90 days or a little longer. So we have to, on the cash side, be prepared to float that for a few months before we get reimbursement. So here's our funding allocation from the TDEC ARPA program, just a little bit over $4.6 million. We do have a 35% city match, which equates to just a little over $1.6 million for total project costs of $6.3 million in this first program that is allocated to the city of Franklin. And I am very pleased to have my colleagues, City Engineer Paul Holzen and Mark Hilty, representing our water and sewer engineers. We have got together a couple of times to go through recommendations for projects that would fit this program, and most of these are in the water and wastewater area, and Paul's going to also then describe a potential project that would fit the stormwater criteria set out by TDEC.
Thank you, Christine. Paul, do you want to knock out the stormwater one first? And
Be happy to.
wonderful.
So for looking at the program, what could potentially qualify? Liberty Hills Pond was one that came up really easily, could qualify now. We all know it's not our property, it's the HOA's property. There's two potential options which we're going to meet with them about and start talking to them about. One is obviously the dredging of the pond. That would absolutely not qualify or check any box in this program at all. And that's pretty typical of pond dredging projects. If they are interested and willing to do a stream restoration project, I got some very positive feedback from TDEC that would be a great project. You're removing an inline dam. It would be a great restoration project. There'd have to be buffers associated with it. So we're meeting with the HOA to present this option. It's one of the options that they encouraged us to go after a grant for, so hopefully they're open to that. And again, it's their property, so we'll walk them through the different options. And one of the things we're looking at is also the life cycle of dredging a pond and that historic cost that would, they'd have to be willing to take on, so.
Make the pond go away and kind of remodel the
Yeah.
body of water that's there.
Correct, to get the grant money.
Areas around it.
Given the requirements of the grant, this was pretty much the main one that we have.
If you're talking about that pond, it makes sense because it's a one and done kind of thing, and then the maintenance of it would be negligible through the years compared to dredging and all that. The other thing is you can put walkways along the stream, you can put benches, you can have an outdoor area, and they also will have the rest, isn't that correct? They'd have the rest of that area to, for the HOA to
Yeah, it'd
put in a
still, it'd just
park
go back
area?
to open space.
You'd
could
have
use-
more usable open
Yeah,
space,
more usable
potentially.
for the HOA.
There would have to be a riparian buffer
Yeah,
component to it,
and they
but
can do that on their own.
I think that would be a good thing to, maybe as an option to possibly screen Liberty Pike versus the pond. So, I mean, there's pros and cons,
Yeah.
whichever way
They
you
can
look
do
at
a
it.
lot of different things there. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so we have 4 sanitary sewer projects and 1 water project, all of which are renewals, meaning that it's existing infrastructure and that we're doing work on it to prolong the life. The first one you see is the Spencer Creek sanitary sewer improvements. We have a sanitary sewer interceptor that runs along Spencer Creek, comes in from Cool Springs. There's a junction box just upstream of the water reclamation facility that requires some lining, and we're evaluating some of the interceptor itself to see what repairs need to happen. This is an effort to remove inflow and infiltration from the sanitary sewer system. So, as for those who aren't familiar with I&I, is what it's referred to is when you have groundwater that can enter into the sanitary sewer system. We're essentially treating groundwater or rainwater when it rains, which we had earlier today. It'll come in the form of inflow, which is more of a direct input into the system, or additional infiltration from the ground. So we're looking at that project. The next one is also a renewal project, as I said. Well, the next 2 are upgrades to sanitary sewer lift stations. Both of these lift stations are over 20 years old, and it's time for them to be renewed. The last wastewater project is pipe and manhole lining and rehab. I think Michelle has spoken with you all about cured in place pipe lining before. She loves to talk about it. Wonderful. Well, I'm sure she'd be happy to show you some video as well. So this, again, is an effort to eliminate or reduce I&I in the collection system. And we have $1 million set there. We don't have specific projects laid out. We're kind of viewing that, as well as the leak detection program for the water side, as kind of a way to apply the balance of extra monies towards these 2 types of projects. So, and lastly, of course, the leak detection program. We have leak detection that we perform in-house, and they have a goal of hitting a certain percentage of our system annually. What we'll do with this is essentially do the entirety of the system in one shot, and perform the repairs in-house if possible, or identify projects that we will have to hire a contractor for. So, but this is leak detection is an ongoing thing. We do it every year. So, and that's
Alderman
it.
Baggett, then Alderman Brown.
And I think I may have seen this somewhere else, maybe from COVID money, but Lewisburg Pike, that's on the COVID money? This
That-
all feels
that-
like COVID money.
That was on the
It's
ARPA
just
program that we came last month and described, and that's
Right.
and Michelle was here and described that project, and that's the program that does not have a match
That's
requirement.
100% funded.
Right, okay. So this is not,
That's part of the
we would
9.2.
not see the Lewisburg here, okay.
Yes,
The other thing is there any, this is the TDEC and clearly centered around water and wastewater. Is there any ARPA funding possibly for other infrastructure? I mean, that sounds like, and I know there was discussion that there was other possible
There's not a lot of
infrastructure.
infrastructure money in the rescue plan. It's water, sewer, broadband, stormwater.
Okay.
That's kind of the parameters. Now, this is additional money that came directly to the state that they're routing down to utilities. And so
Okay.
that's what we're taking advantage of here, but it's
So there's
very
no other
narrow.
expected.
There's not broader infrastructure funding. That's coming in the infrastructure piece that we're still learning more about how that's going to fit. So that's probably where you'll see that opportunity.
And just to give some context, the American Rescue Plan was adopted or signed into law, I believe, March the 3rd of 2021. And really, we did not get all the rules that we have now until the last few months. And so, in fact, TDEC even released another document giving us more information about this program today. So when this infrastructure bill gets in place, it's going to take us a while to get all of the rules. They make a big splash when they're put into place, but it takes a while for Treasury and the different federal agencies to give their huge documents they post those for us.
So if the board's comfortable with this, what we would do is enter the process that starts in June with TDEC to start vetting these projects. And from what we know, we think these qualify, but we'll learn more and we'll follow back up with you all as we get more specific direction. But we're fairly confident from what we know that these will all fit that. We'll get more direction on how we want to handle things like Liberty Hills and these other elements. But if you're comfortable, we'll start pursuing that in June.
What
if we could-
happens to some of these cities that maybe don't take advantage of this, and that money would go back to the state? Is there a chance for some reallocation?
That is part of what is going to be opened up at the start of calendar year 23. It's because of the November 1st deadline on this program, TDEC will know what is not even being applied for at the end of the year. It was certainly interesting going to the meeting I went to. There were some counties that were grappling, with because of course most counties in Tennessee are going to be working with utility districts because they do not have their own water and wastewater systems. They have utility districts, whereas certainly we're extremely fortunate having a water and sewer department as part of the city that we work with every day, and we all work for the same person. So we can talk about these things together rather than having to do agreements with separate utility districts. So, but every single county and city having to pay for matches makes a big difference. And so we don't know how much will be available the first of next year, but even TDEC they've started to put that framework for the next round so that they want the ones who do have potential projects to be ready to apply, because they want to spend all the money. And if we could go to the next slide, you'll see just a couple of deadlines that we have. Certainly the June 1st is the application period opening. All funds must be under contract by the end of 2024. TDEC has set a contract end date no later than September 30th of 26. Of course, the federal ARPA sets 12/31/2026 as spending all the money, but they want contracts to end by September 30th, probably thinking that they're going to have to, some things just happen. So they TDEC wants us to use this money and make it be a good program, but this is this is the rules that they have set for us.
And
Alderman Brown?
just to confirm, by taking the funds, we're not inviting additional oversight or loss of control of these projects. It's not going to slow us down.
And well, we are fortunate in some ways that because of being part of the state revolving loan fund program, there are some federal purchasing requirements that we are already familiar with that are required. It actually doesn't have quite as many strings as the SRF program, but it has a lot of them. So we do have to report it as grant funding. We do have what's called a single audit requirement, which our comptroller, Mike Lowe, already leads us in doing that reporting. So we already have the systems in place that we're fortunate that it is more work, but we have the systems in place to accommodate it.
And
on
part
the
of why we.
financial management, but I'm
Yeah.
more curious on the actual projects themselves.
Yeah.
You know, are we gonna?
We,
Go ahead.
we run the project.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's our design process, our bidding process, our construction oversight process. So they're ours.
And we kind of picked this group because we think they fit nicely in that. They're their own set of actions that we can manage within that, so.
Vice Mayor?
Well, and I mean, I can do the simple math. We over forecasted by about $1 million plus. How do we decide or prioritize those? Because some of them almost kind of seem like they run in concert with each other. If you look at, if you want to go back a slide, the Forest Crossing and the Riverview, to me, those would act together. I don't know. Sounds like it might. And now that we've kind of let the cat out of the bag, it's like you don't want to back off one that somebody deems more important than the next. So could we maybe have like a second tier of possibility if we go back to the well again?
Well, something also is, certainly I believe there's a meeting set up through the engineering department with Liberty Hills neighborhood to really find out what their interest is in the stream restoration. So we did want to have more, certainly because we don't know what the timing of this presentation to you is right before that we start getting feedback from the neighborhood to make sure this is what they would want to do or not. But we've also talked about that these are all on the water and wastewater side projects that were already in our plan.
But is there contingencies built in? Because we're really good at building a big gap. I mean, maybe there's $1 million gap in here. I don't know. Zach
No,
Daniel is like Mr. Contingency, so I learned that early on.
Michelle she has a list of projects that we can go back to the well, as
Okay.
you said.
You see what I'm
Should
saying? I'm like, oh, we've got
should we need
6-something
to.
million, and here's 7 million.
Yeah. And the last slide that Christine had shared, it shows a pretty aggressive timeline in obligating the funds and actually spending them.
Okay.
Some of these large projects, it's going to take all of several 3-4 years to do.
Sure.
So we can't tackle plant projects because those are 5-10 years
The
long.
window of time, yeah.
But when the competitive grant process starts at the beginning of calendar year 23, we have another
Passel of projects.
passel of projects that we can look towards. So
I do think that list, though, is in our minds, from staff perspective, kind of in priority order. And the largest down there, and the last two are ones that we can adjust to fit what's left because they are ongoing programs. So that's at least at this stage with what we know, how we would prioritize those dollars.
Okay, items 9, 10, 11, and 12 have to do with procurement awards. One to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee for admin of group health, prescription drug, and vision benefits. The other one for dental, administrative services, and then there's life insurance procurement and also employee assistance program services.
Employee assistance is employee counseling, whether it's financial or needs of family members or whatever it might be. And there's a certain number of essentially no-cost sessions for employees or their family members to support them in different needs. There's a wide variety of support.
Any questions?
Sorry, I'm the insurance. I know.
Uh-oh.
What do we? United Healthcare came in lower, and by a significant amount. Was there? And what are we paying now? So it's $401,000 for the Blue Cross. But what is it now for it? I guess I didn't.
So that number on the letter, the 401, is just pure premium. So it's just the city's portion and the administrative fees. So there's no increase with Blue Cross Blue Shield. So the claims side, so we're self-insured, so the claims is a whole different bucket of
Sure.
money.
Yeah. Did their administrative fee go up? I guess that's what I'm asking. Is the administrative fee go up?
So the administrative fee, I think, was lower.
It doesn't really matter. It's fine. We can talk offline. I'm just be curious
I think it might
about
have been
that.
lower, but when we were reviewing the RFPs, we just like the resources and.
Sure.
And Blue Cross Blue Shield's gonna give us a wellness fund that we can
That's good.
utilize for, we typically use it for, replacing our gym equipment at City Hall and other gyms around. So it just kind of seemed like a better fit.
We have nothing negative to say about any of the places that gave us bids. They were all competitive, they were all good. One might have been higher than the other, but it's not as though we have anything against United Health. They just,
Okay, thanks. How about a discussion regarding ward boundary updates? Apparently, we can't do a 1, 2, 3, 4 because of the complications of writing the resolution that has to be done, so we need a little guidance from the board, what their feeling is as far as those ward boundaries.
So, yeah, if this feels like a deja vu, it is. But there seemed like there was some consensus around maybe option 3 when we talked last time. But as the mayor said, the ordinance we have to write is like a meets and bounds. It's very detailed about describing the wards. So if we can get a sense, go ahead and pull up 3. If we can get a sense of where you're most comfortable, we can write that ordinance accordingly. So I just open it back up for any guidance you want to provide us, and we'll write that ordinance based on what you all want to do.
You know, when we were talking about it before, it seems like more agreement on option 3 than the others. I mean, I don't, since I'm at large, but still.
We're not voting, but I see at least one head shaking.
I will not lie. I continue to be a fan of option 3. I think it serves us all the best.
And even though I'm an at-large, I'll make a comment, and I think to the tone that Patrick set last time is the downtown area is a very unique quadrant of individuals with very specialized needs, unlike traditional subdivisions. And I do think it's important, which option 3 offers, more conversation amongst several ward aldermen to better represent them and have their voice heard more clearly by several aldermen instead of just dumping it all on one poor ward alderman pretty much, and then he's trying to juggle 2 different very diverse areas. So I think it's good that they're going to have a larger voice with this option 3.
Any other comments?
I would say there's going to be tremendous growth. We can't wait 10 years to do this again, in my opinion.
Unless we do a special census, which likely we would do a special census in between.
Just with what's proposed in development, and it's going to be off balance. And I think, and to Ward 1, no offense, Alderman Berger, barely changed at all. And anyway, I think there's just some. And if that's the
Very clean.
and I would argue that anyway, we should be looking at things other than clean lines to establish ward boundaries. No, I want Matt to have some. I think Matt should have some. But anyway, I mean, I can continue to be the fly in the ointment here, or but the option 3 is the most palatable. But nonetheless, we're still taking some out of inside of Matt Catcher out of Ward 4. But if Ward 1's not willing to move, further south, or we're not willing to break the clean lines, then I think we'll just have to do this. But so, again, I don't want to. We don't want to reinvent the wheel here, because we're already down this road. But clean lines are really trying to get some real geography and character areas is probably what I'd would have rather have seen. But again, I think I heard some others say that with the tremendous growth that we have already been approved, that Alderman Potts' Ward 3 is going to be seeing a lot of growth, and maybe we just within maybe 5 years, we might look at this again to better balance.
I think at least, didn't we do 2 special censuses in
I
a
know, but
10-year
let-
period?
but-
We did.
But wait, let me tell you though, we were looking at, getting state money and stuff like that. The only thing about a federal census, it has all those little districts. We have never seen the map where the districts were, I mean, the little bitty enumeration districts are. See, and so we don't do that whenever we do a special census.
Right.
So really.
Yeah,
this-
we
this is
haven't
the
based it
time.
off of a special census in the past. We'd have to look at if we have the
If you could
detail that it
possibly
would
do it.
required to do it
Yeah.
or not, but it's certainly an option for us to at least explore when we do. And I would expect we're going to do at least a couple special censuses because of just the math of it. It pays for itself and gets us our fair share of state shared money back, state shared revenue back. So I think probably 3 years from now, we're having a conversation about special census if the last decade was any example.
We're allowed to do it. We don't have to just update ward boundaries every 10 years. And we can do it.
You are required to do it then.
Required.
I think you have freedom to adjust it as long as you're providing a balance among the wards, because that's the element, that there's a relatively equal voice for voters in each of the wards.
And others, I believe, had some concerns too with the.
But let me say though, have we personally ever seen all the boundaries of each one of those little districts, the enumeration districts? I don't think so.
I'd have
I mean,
to
not
ask-
that I want to
I'd have
do
to
it.
ask Chris Robinson, who did this for us,
No,
and
no,
who
I mean,
draws all
I'm-
those different
I'm not-
elements, but
I'm
yeah.
not saying anything, I think probably 3 is the best thing,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just saying though, I would have liked to have seen those, since,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, they're very small. I mean, they're not, I don't know how many little enumeration districts were in the city of Franklin. I mean, dozens, at least dozens.
And for the folks listening, I'll get you in just a second, but the people listening in online and video and all that, the importance of doing a special census is that if you're growing rapidly, you want to capture the state shared revenue,
Exactly.
which is about $125 a person.
Exactly.
Is what sticks in my brain. Alderman
you're
Barnhill?
Well, I don't think we should wait 10 years each time in between redrawing the wards. And if we can do the wards off of the city census, I think we need to be looking at that then. I mean, just like you said, it doesn't take long to get a disproportionate number of people in a specific ward. And I could see where Ward 3, whatever the scenario is here, Ward 3 could rapidly get disproportionately larger than any of the other wards. Probably Ward 2 is the one that's going to have the least. See if I'm thinking, but Ward 2 would be the one that have the least amount of growth in it then, so. But I think we do the special census for the state shared revenue.
Alderman Potts?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have to pardon, I'm losing my voice tonight. But I do think it does come down to option 2 or option 3. I agree with what Alderman Barnhill is saying, is that we do have to look to the future. I think that there was a good, regarding special assessment and the potential growth that's going to be there. The multifamily units that haven't been built, that will be built in the next 3 to 5 years, are going to be important. There was a comment as well a moment ago, and I'm sorry I don't recall who said it, but talking about the balance of Ward 4. It is somebody compared it to being a bow tie previously. And I think both of these options actually do open that up and make it a little bit more palatable for Ward 4. But Eric, I don't know if we need to make that decision tonight, if you're asking us to do that, if you're just asking for more
I'd like you
feedback.
to weigh in on what option you want us to write an ordinance for. So if 3 is where you want to go, we'll draw that up. If you want to think about it longer, let us know, but there's a lot involved in writing it, so I don't want to subject us to writing 4 of them. So if you can narrow it for us, that would be helpful.
Then you want to go around?
That's up to the mayor how he wants to.
And afterward, I have one more thing to say.
I'll get Alderman Peterson's comment.
No, let me tell you, decades ago, whenever Franklin was really starting to grow so much and everything, Ward 2 had Fieldstone Farms. And so actually there was a League of Women Voters here, and we found out that Ward 2 had as many people as all the other three put together in that one ward, because that's where the growth was. I mean, this is decades ago. And I remember that it was very interesting to see them redrawn by the staff.
Well, I think it's okay for people to mention what their favorite map is.
Okay. I have no problem with 3.
3. Okay.
Well, we'll skip you.
That'd be fine. I don't have much of a voice. Go ahead. I'll come back.
Keep going down the line. Have you lost your voice, Alderman Baggett?
I think I'm just stifling in light of, but it's all right. I think 3 is palatable. I do think there's probably more creative options but it would require fewer clean lines. But if I have to pick 1, 3 over 2, for sure. 4 would be ideal.
Sure.
I'm good with 3 or 4, but 3 looks better to me. And, you know, I tried to go below 96. I tried, because I'm already below.
already
that.
below, aren't
I'm
you?
already below there now, yeah. So, but anyway, they wouldn't give it to me, so.
We know what Alderman
They
Brown
want
said.
clean lines.
And the Vice Mayor?
I don't really have a dog in the hunt, so
So, Mr. Mayor, coming back, I'll put my 2 cents in as well. I do agree. I think if we're looking just for cleanliness of lines and trying to use existing roads that that option 3 provides us with that over 2. So.
Well, let's talk about item 14 then, regarding city court judge selection process.
I think Jessica's going to join me up here. Jessica Davies works with not only our customer service, revenue management, but also the city court clerk function. As you know, Judge Hood is submitted her resignation effective the end of August. She's running for a different court seat and judge seat, so she's prepared to make that change. And so we have a process that we need to decide on in terms of how we want to select that position. The board makes that appointment, and it's typically been a 4-year term. It is essentially a part-time sort of contracted position at $25,000 a year. And I described for you in the memo how we did it about 8 years ago when Judge Taylor went on to the county bench, and we went through a process. We did somewhat like you do a normal job position, if you will, and then provided the finalists and video recordings of those interviews to the board to review, and then the board made a decision based on a recommendation. We did incorporate staff members from police, from city court, and building and neighborhood services, all involved, HR, law, myself, all involved in reviewing and screening those with board guidance. So we're open to however you want to proceed it. It's your decision ultimately, and we want to support you in the best way we can. So open it up for any feedback you want to provide.
I might just add a quick addendum before I call on anybody, as we ran into Judge Hood the other day and had a little brief conversation, but she's also the city judge in another city, and she described the 2 processes that she had gone through, and one of them was the process that you're familiar with that we use, and the other one was actually candidates being in front of the elected body, and then it was a straight up and down vote after those interviews, which she was really liked our process much better than that one. I guess I'm trying to say it in a nice way. So
Put on the hot seat. Yeah. All I would say is you have a criteria there that people, there's requirements. The actual requirements on there, I think they have to meet those. If they meet those, then I think they need to come before this body. See, at one time, they were going through a process through the city, and then they gave us like 2 or 3 to choose from, which I really don't like that. I think if they meet the requirements, they should come before this body, because I think they have the right to do so as an applicant, requesting, to be considered, actually, for the judgeship. So anyway, this is my 2 cents.
So I would disagree because we don't get involved in the hiring of any other department head that deeply. And this is a part-time employee. However, what I will say is they're probably going to interface with our community more so than anyone. So I do think the hire is important. But I'm fine with the way we did it previously. I think with laws, especially laws, heavily involvement, and the people they're going to be working with, they're the ones I think that need to have the input on the majority, and then us kind of help usher that in its final stages. It's funny though, I did come up with one thought. It's like, we just got through doing this market adjustment, but yet we're not 25,000. It's like, that's the pay. And I mean, are we looking at letting that incrementally? There's a lot of things in this upper echelon that needs to start.
I'm not sure that, it's not a heavy workload.
Okay.
Let's put it that way. So I think we feel that
that's fair.
If we don't have a lot of people submit, maybe we need to reexamine it. But
Okay.
the general sense is that that's a pretty fair compensation given the workload.
Okay, good to know. I haven't had to go before that, Judge,
Yeah.
so I don't really know.
And we're working to reduce the number of dockets we have a month as well.
Okay.
So,
Just to be more efficient.
Yeah, be more
We
efficient
do
with
a
that time.
contested docket once a month, so that actually helps streamline the process, that there's really only one time a month that there's really a lot of discussion. The other ones are pretty rote in terms of moving folks through. So it's, and actually Judge Hood commented about that as well, that she thought the compensation was fair for the
Okay, good to know.
work. So,
Yeah, good to know.
Go ahead, Alderman Hanson.
Where does this get posted for them to apply for this position?
what we did 8 years ago is I believe we advertised it as like we do a job in terms of we put it in the newspaper and we posted it online and at City Hall. We've already had several inquiries about this position, so I think you're going to have a decent-sized pool to select from. So that's the other thing to consider too, is how much time you want to spend. If you get 20 people, that's 20 interviews the whole board has to do if you go down that route, as opposed to allowing some screening and then us provide you with a group of finalists. So we'll do whatever you want to do. That's just something to think about in terms of, and if you wanted to, one other option to consider is if you wanted to have board representation on that initial screening interview, so that there's one and we're not into a public meeting situation. They're just considerations about having the whole board versus a representation of the board or staff doing an initial review.
I'm not interested in sitting through 20 interviews with applicants. I mean, I don't know, maybe everyone else is. But one item that I asked a prominent attorney in town, and I think those interviews were videoed, so we could watch them. And so we do get to see and hear and see kind of vet in that realm. I would like that to be included if that happens.
Yeah, we definitely could do that.
Because,
Alderman Brown?
Yeah,
Those would be public. I mean, we would let the applicants know those become public documents, but I don't think that'd be an issue.
Yeah, similar comment to Alderman Baggett. I agree. I don't need to, I'm going to trust the staff to know what we need, who knows best over ordinances and all that kind of stuff. The only thing is they are starting to reach out. So what I don't want is I don't want to have 20 meetings anyway because they're asking and they want to have a conversation. So, and especially if they do that 8 times over, now we've actually quadrupled the amount of work. So either the process should be laid out for them that, hey, you're not going to have that time. Otherwise, I'm going to feel, I mean, somebody reaches out, I'm going to feel compelled to want to have a conversation. If we have 20 of those, we're defeating the purpose. So either to lay that out clearly to them or to give us an opportunity, maybe it's get to the finalist and there's a meet and greet or something like that. I want to be respectful of them taking on the role if they want to ask questions. I just don't want to do it with every single person individually.
My only comment was that this particular job does come before us for a vote, unlike the other department heads. So it does come before us. So I don't, I'm not even alluding to the fact there would be any favoritism towards anybody, but, it is what it is. And I think that your idea about a meet and greet might be fine, because I think we should, since it is our responsibility, it does come under our responsibility to vote on that. I think if I were somebody applying for that position or that opportunity, and I never got a chance to talk to the board who is doing the hiring, I would feel sort of cut out of it. I'm just looking for fairness. I'm not interested in sitting through 20 interviews either, don't get me wrong. But I think there should be some kind of process that at least gets them in front of us, whether it's a meet and greet or whatever, to give them that opportunity. I just like fairness.
Would that make sense to do sort of the video recording of interviews and the combination of maybe a more informal, just meet and greet with the finalist group, maybe?
The video's fine.
So,
I'd like to see them, I mean, at some point, I'd like to see them all, but that met all the qualifications.
do you want to review resumes?
Yes.
As long as
There's a difference between reviewing resumes and sitting down with whatever number of people we get.
And definitely have a meet and greet with the final candidates. I think we owe that to the public for transparency, and then for ourselves, that we know that we've made the absolute best selection out of the candidates.
Plus
Alderman Barnhill, do you have a
this is
comment
requirements, yeah.
before I hammer down the meeting?
I'm on. The process last time worked pretty well. I think I would prefer to have a little more tweaking into that. And I wouldn't mind watching the video of whatever number of interviews you have. I think that gives each candidate that applies, gives each candidate a fair shot at being recognized. So I'd do the videos and not necessarily 20 different interviews.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you just a few minutes after 7, as soon as they can get the room changed over.
Yeah, right.
We're adjourned.